US President Donald Trump called for Iran's unconditional surrender Tuesday, ratcheting up tensions and marking a new escalation to the air war between longtime enemies Israel and Iran, now into its sixth day. After meeting with his National Security Council Tuesday to discuss the conflict, Trump wrote on Truth Social, "We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding," referring to Iran's Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. While he said there was no intention to kill Iran's leader for now, he added, "Our patience is wearing thin." Minutes later, he posted, in all capital letters, "Unconditional surrender." Trump had spoken to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by phone on Tuesday, according to a White House official. Meanwhile, the US president also dismissed a verdict by his spy chief, Tulsi Gabbard, in March that Iran was not developing nuclear weapons. Responding to reporters on board Air Force One Tuesday, Trump said, quote, "I don't care what she said, I think they were very close to having one." In clashing with his spy chief, Trump now appears to side with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's justification for launching strikes last week on Iranian nuclear and military targets. Iran expert Trita Parsi, the executive vice president of the Quincy Institute in Washington, D.C., says the latest developments have the U.S. on the brink of a major escalation and that the Iranians likely won't submit to Trump's demand.
If they don't trust that surrender actually is an option because they believe that once they were to agree to it, the Israelis would not be content with just destroying the nuclear program. They would go after the missile program, and then it would snowball to a whole set of other things. And as a result, I don't think that they think is an actual option. So if Trump goes and insists on surrender, if talks even take place, I think it will ensure war.
The U.S. is bolstering its forces in the Middle East with more fighter aircraft. Those include F-16s, F-22s, and F-35s, according to officials Tuesday, who stressed the jets will be used defensively to shoot down drones and projectiles. A large buildup of tanker aircraft to Europe and deployment of an aircraft carrier have also given additional options to Trump as the war continues. Iran denies seeking nuclear weapons and has pointed to its right to nuclear technology for peaceful purposes, including enrichment, as a party to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel's Netanyahu, meanwhile, has stressed that he will not back down until Iran's nuclear development is disabled. Ever since Iran-backed Hamas attacked Israel on October 7, 2023, and triggered the Gaza war, Tehran's regional influence has waned. That was as Israel pounded Iran's proxies, from Hamas in Gaza to Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen.
Nous ne voulons pas un Iran qui se dote de l'arme nucléaire.
We do not want Iran to get nuclear weapons or have ballistic capabilities. I believe that the biggest error today is to seek a regime change in Iran through military means, because that would lead to chaos. Therefore, our responsibility is to resume discussions as quickly as possible to restore a framework for addressing the nuclear and ballistic issues. This is what France has consistently done for the past 10 years.
C'est constamment ce que la France fait depuis 10 ans.
Does anyone think that what was done in Iraq in 2003 was a good idea? Does anyone think that what was done in Libya the next decade was a good idea? No. I'm also thinking of our friends in the region, in Iraq, Lebanon, and elsewhere. We must help them reduce everything that, indeed, threatens their security, but they need anything but chaos.
Along the southern New Mexico border separating the U.S. from Mexico, this has become a common sight. In April, 110,000 acres of land, an area 7 times the size of Manhattan, was transferred to the U.S. Army for 3 years from the Bureau of Land Management. A second was created in May with a transfer of International Boundary and Water Commission land in Texas. The 2 so-called national defense areas are satellites of Army bases in Arizona and Texas. That gives troops the right to hold and question civilian trespassers without the need for U.S. President Donald Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act. The Army has not made public the zone's boundaries. Rancher Russell Johnson says he's unsure if his home, or over half his ranch, is inside the area.
if the national defense area truly does go up to Highway 9, my house is south of Highway 9. So in theory, I live within the national defense area. Probably close to half of my ranch is in the national defense area. And there's been no communications to me other than you will have no issues doing what you've been doing for the last 100 years.
Johnson, a former Border Patrol agent who has testified to the U.S. Congress about illegal border crossers, welcomes the zone as an extra layer of security.
I see it as, at this time, a necessity to get things back under control and to maintain a form of control on the border.
In the past 4 months, the number of active duty troops on the border rose from 2,500 at the end of the Biden administration to 8,000, according to the U.S. Army.
Boy, when I see the military, I get angry at our country that this is where we're spending our money, our resources.
Abby Carpenter is with the Battalion Search and Rescue Group, humanitarian volunteers that search for migrant remains. The group's founder is concerned the military zone will push migrants west into even more dangerous desert crossings.
We're anxious in the future about not being able to come out here because this is supposedly a military zone. There are no signs, we don't know that yet, but who's going to look for these remains if we're not allowed out here? Will they just be covered up by the desert sands?
Along the international boundary, Reuters saw warning signs posted inside the United States around 45 feet north of the border barrier, around every 328 feet, facing south. That meant if you had crossed the border and could read them, you were already in the zone. Since May, federal judges in Texas and New Mexico have dismissed trespassing charges against migrants caught within the area, ruling there was no evidence they saw signs before entering the zone. Troops have alerted Border Patrol to 390 illegal crossings in the nearly 2 months since the first zone was established. They made their first detentions on June 3rd. Border Patrol arrested nearly 40,000 migrants in the El Paso sector in the fiscal year to April, down 78% from the year earlier period.
Aduh.
Yesterday afternoon, when the volcano erupted, we were on our front lawn. But then the stones started raining down on us and we ran to Hekong. Then, when it finally subsided, we returned here.
The latest condition we know as of this morning is eruptions are still occurring, and the impacts of these eruptions include ashfall with stones, which affected main road access between the East Flores and the Sika regencies. We are working as fast as possible to clear this up.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky left the Group of Seven summit on Tuesday, saying diplomacy is in crisis, having missed the chance to press US President Donald Trump for more weapons. Host of the summit, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a major new aid package in support.
We're also sending over $2 billion in funding for drones, ammunition, armored vehicles,
as well as fresh sanctions on Russia. But the G7 wealthy nations struggled to find unity over the conflict in Ukraine, as Trump expressed support for Russian President Vladimir Putin and left a day early to address the Israel-Iran conflict from Washington. Zelensky had said he hoped to talk to Trump about acquiring more weapons. On his Telegram account, Zelensky said diplomacy is now in a state of crisis and that G7 leaders need to continue calling on Trump to use his real influence to force an end to the war. While Canada is one of Ukraine's most vocal defenders, its ability to help Kyiv is far outweighed by the United States, its largest arms supplier. It comes after a Russian attack on Tuesday on Kyiv and other cities killed more than a dozen people, including one American, according to the US State Department.
I saw the first film when I was 10 in the theater, and it was like, it imprinted on me very deeply. And for the next 3 decades, I was like, I would have done anything to be in a Jurassic movie in any capacity. Obviously, the dinosaurs are extraordinary, and there's like so many amazing visuals. But the characters in the film are really like they're fully developed and fully realized, and the stakes are high, and so you want them to win. You want them to survive, really.
News around in the second.
It is a great one. The world is going to love it. I saw it yesterday. Absolutely.